These are leaders of the nationwide youth organization that calls itself SDS, Students for a Democratic Society. It has more than 300 chapters on the college campuses of America. Its national and local leaders in convention here at the Chicago Coliseum, June 1969, take the major credit for the rioting, mob actions, takeovers, and burnings on college and university campuses throughout the nation.
Since we've been finding out about the organization of SDS, we've always been quite willing to talk about
We'll talk about socialism anywhere, in the streets or in the Senate, anywhere, you know. I'm Mike Klonsky, National Secretary of SDS, and this is Bernadine Dorn, Inter-Organizational Secretary.
So you were... Is there a communist faction making a big power play for SDS at this
time? Is there any communists back here? I guess there is.
Are there communists in this organization?
Sure, man. There's a lot of communists. You'll see. When you come in and listen, you hear people talk, and you can judge for yourself whether they're communists or not.
There are communists in the organization, there's no doubt about that. There are also liberals in the organization.
SDS is not, and the movement in this country is not something that exists during the school year and is going to start up again in the fall, and that they have to worry about whether we're going to be in the streets in the fall. We're going to be on the streets and in every institution in this country from now on.
What would you put? We're going to replace capitalism with socialism.
We're going to fight some capitalism with some basic socialistic programs. We'll fight imperialism with proletarian internationalism.
We need socialism in practice. We need an understanding of Marxist-Leninist principles so that we may put our knowledge into revolutionary practice.
Yes, they are communists. Their mission proudly proclaimed the violent overthrow of the democratic system. And yet our nation seems unbelieving, even unconcerned. Many newspapers, television commentators, and educators call these young revolutionaries dissidents. The problem, they say, is simply one of student unrest. But are these voices voices of mere dissent, of mere student unrest, or of sedition and revolution? This documentary is devoted to an entirely unrelated movement for change, a movement of revolution, which openly declares its purpose to be, first, the destruction of our American educational system, then our economic system, and finally, our system of government. Let the revolutionaries themselves tell it like it is. This is Mark Rudd, April 1968, at Columbia University, New York City. Rudd had been named chairman of the SDS chapter at Columbia after returning from a 3-week tour of Cuba where he visited Fidel Castro.
Is SDS, Mark, really interested in Columbia, or is it just a stepping stone? Are you concerned with something much bigger than Columbia? Why did you use Columbia, or did you use Columbia?
I say that neither is true, or both are true. So what it is a training ground, or not only a training ground, but one that has immediate relevance.
Its SDS leader, Mark Rudd, was a training exercise, and the goal, the takeover by violence of the United States. According to a Los Angeles Times report, December 22, 1968, and I quote, "At the height of the student rebellion at Columbia, an SDS leader was approached by worried moderates who objected to reported plans for using clubs and gasoline against the police. They were told very clearly, quote, 'You liberals don't understand what the scene is all about. It is about power and disruption. The more blood, the better,' end of quote." SDS leader Mark Rudd wrote Grayson Kirk, the then president of Columbia University, quote, "You call for order and respect for authority. We call for socialism."
A federal grand jury in Detroit today charged the 13 top leaders of the Weathermen with plotting to bomb public buildings in Chicago, Detroit, New York, and Berkeley, California. The Weathermen are the militant faction of the Students for a Democratic Society. Only one of the 13 is now in custody.
At 7:30 this morning, KPFK received a call from a woman identifying herself as a member of the Weather Underground.
Hello. I'm going to read a declaration of a state of war. This is the first communication from the Weatherman Underground. Kids know the lines are drawn. Revolution is touching all of our lives. Freaks are revolutionaries, and revolutionaries are freaks. If you want to find us, this is where we are. In every tribe, commune, dormitory, farmhouse, barracks, and townhouse, where kids are making love, smoking dope, and loading guns, fugitives from American justice are free to go. Within the next 14 days, we will attack a symbol or institution of American injustice.
Power belongs to the young people and the black people in this country. Come on, we gotta fight it out. We gotta build a strong base, and someday we gotta knock those motherfuckers who control this thing right on their ass.
The FBI said the Weather Underground organization, which took credit for the bombing, is the same radical group which was responsible for the bombing of the U.S. Capitol in 1971 and the Pentagon in 1972. But federal officials don't really know much about the group, which is believed to have between 20 and 30 members.
My name is Bernadine Dorn, and I was part of the Weather Underground from, well, it's hard to say when it started, 1970 to 1980. It's underground for 11 years.
There's no way to be committed to nonviolence in the middle of the most violent society that history's ever created. I'm not committed to nonviolence in any way.
Sisters and brothers, the head of the Police Sergeants Association called emotionally for all-out war between the pigs and us. We accepted. Last night...
And now a page from our Sunday morning almanac, March 6th, 1970. 46 years ago today, the day homegrown terrorism blew a historic New York City home to bits.
Guard your banks, guard your children, guard your doors.
For that was the day a bomb accidentally exploded in a 19th century Greenwich Village townhouse, a building once owned by stockbroker Charles Merrill, one of the founders of Merrill Lynch. The bomb was being assembled by members of the Weather Underground, a radical left-wing group that took its name from the Bob Dylan lyric, "You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows." 3 members of the group were killed outright. 2 others, Kathy Boudin and Kathy Wilkerson, whose father owned the townhouse, survived the blast but quickly fled the scene.
Police are centering their search in Chicago for the young woman who escaped the townhouse during the explosions.
In the confusion that followed, actor Dustin Hoffman was spotted retrieving valuables from his apartment in the townhouse next door. After years on the run, Kathy Wilkerson voluntarily surrendered in 1980. She would serve less than a year in prison.
Among the 4 suspects arrested was Catherine Boudin.
More spectacularly, Kathy Boudin was arrested for her role in a 1981 Brinks truck robbery that left 3 people dead. She was paroled in 2003 and was later, and not without controversy, appointed an adjunct professor at Columbia University in 2013.
1 minute before 1 o'clock this morning, the switchboard at the Capitol received a phone call. A man's voice said a bomb would go off in the building in half an hour. At 1:30 in the morning, it did, in a small unmarked restroom on the ground floor of the Senate side, next to a barber shop and near several small offices, including one committee hearing room. For a report on the first serious damage to the nation's foremost structure since the British burned it in 1814, here is ABC congressional correspondent Bob Clark.
There was alarm for a time that other bombs might still be hidden inside the Capitol. Police used dogs specially trained to sniff out explosives in a painstaking search both inside and outside the building. The single bomb set off by a timing device left the men's room a shambles, plumbing demolished, bricks and plaster ripped from walls. Army and FBI experts sifted the debris, seeking a clue to the nature of the explosive. There was heavy damage to the nearby barber shop. Windows were smashed there, and 100 feet away in the Senate restaurant, where tables were overturned and a priceless stained glass mosaic destroyed. Damage estimated in the hundreds of thousands of dollars might have been far worse, but for the 3-foot thick walls in the oldest part of the Capitol. As it was, the violent explosion ripped off doors in nearby conference rooms. There was no damage to the Senate chamber itself on the floor above.
My students will occasionally bring up the war in Vietnam and ask me what my involvement was. And I'll say, well, I helped found an organization whose goal was the violent overthrow of the government of the United States. And my students would look at me as if I'm from another planet.
This system is going to be overthrown. It's going to mean a fight. And it's going to mean a lot of white people risking a lot of things when they finally join on the side of the black people and the people of Vietnam and around the world who have already begun the fight.
I'm not going to tell you, oh, I walked in here this day and put a bomb here, or I made this here, or I blew up this car, or I held up this bank. I mean, there were armed robberies. They were all armed robberies, terrorism. You know, there was all kinds of things that went down that were illegal. So I tell you that we did them, but I'm not going to tell you which ones I did or who did what, because you just can't do that.